There's an old saying that goes like this: imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, and the gaming industry is chock full of people imitating from each other. You can call it getting inspiration all you want, but when every game now has a Souls-like style to it or a Souls-like combat system to it, things start to get a little bit sticky. Everything from Metroidvanias to Doom clones to World of Warcraft clones and everything else in between. Boy, it sure is fun playing the same indie roguelite kind of game that has the same pixel art style that everybody else does, with a really convoluted story in the end dealing with some kind of tragic personal loss. Haven't played that one before now, have we? But things are getting out of control because even though there are other companies and developers that take inspiration, there aren't any blatant direct copies of things. We've seen these kinds of things, they'll get pretty close, but no cigar. If you haven't checked out Melancholy, that's a great song and also a great album called Penny Bridge Pioneers. I also highly recommend Home From Home. Trust me. Boy, that tangent really did throw me off. Okay, where was I? Yes, copying. Yeah, we've seen this happen with Nintendo and Palworld, and we've also seen how there are vast differences between what Pokemon should have been doing and what Palworld actually succeeded at doing on their own. The thing is, though, this is going to get worse before it gets better, but we're seeing PlayStation turn around and take a page right out of Nintendo's playbook, which is going to be funny when we go over that later, as they are now suing Tencent over a video game that is a blatant copy of the Horizon series. Of all the games to pick to copy, you pick Horizon. You couldn't do like a copy of Rogue Galaxy or Killzone or Legend of Dragoon or Siphon Filter or even SOCOM. You had to do Horizon, the most boring, bland, basic, generic-ass video game. Okay. Let's see what happened, though. According to Reuters, Sony Interactive Entertainment has sued Tencent for copyright and trademark infringement in California federal court, accusing the Chinese tech conglomerate of ripping off its popular, quote, Horizon series of adventure video games. Sony said in a lawsuit filed on Friday that Tencent's upcoming Light of Mataram is a slavish clone of its games that copy several distinct, quote, Horizon elements and threatens to confuse buyers. And you know what's funny about this lawsuit? PlayStation has been one company in particular that is, in my opinion, creatively bankrupt and basically just copies off of everybody else. Can I copy your homework, bro? Yeah, just don't make it too similar to what I'm doing right now, and you should be fine. PlayStation Move, anybody? Remember that entire debacle happening? Yeah, I do. Remember the fact that they tried to make their own actual Little Big Planet go-kart racer or the Crash Team Racing? Don't forget about that one either. Or how about when they made their own PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale game, just like literally Smash Brothers, almost like word for word, bar for bar, beat for beat. And let's not forget that other exclusive by Square Enix on PlayStation, where it was basically called Foam Stars, where you pretty much just had your own Splatoon clone full of anime girls. The copying in the gaming industry goes a little bit too far sometimes. And I will say this though, every company does take either inspiration or copies from others. But the thing is, this may be going a little bit too far depending, because even when Light of Mataram was even shown, everybody was like, yo, this is literally a Horizon ripoff. Everybody saw it, everybody knew it, you could see it at that moment in time. You almost thought I was going to say directly, I got you, listen, stop it. Stop it. Don't make it directly counter. We don't need this right now. But everybody saw it and everybody knew, hey, this is what you're trying to copy. That doesn't mean it was going to be a bad game, but that means they definitely took inspiration from the entire thing. However, though, like we've shown before, every company does copy off others in some conceivable way. And that doesn't mean everybody can go around suing everybody because you don't like it on your end. Nintendo opening up the lawsuit door to try and patent actual game mechanics, and now also suing Palworld because of those mechanics and because of, you know, the whole idea of Pokemon is getting even wilder because now PlayStation decided to take their attempt to sue Tencent about their game being very close to Horizon. But there's more to this than just the actual surface level stuff of copying. Let's see what else is going on in that as well. Reuters continues by saying Sony released the first game in the Horizon series, Horizon Zero Dawn, on its PlayStation 4 in 2017. The games follow a red-headed woman named Aloy as she navigates a post-apocalyptic world populated by human tribes and robotic animals. Sony said that in its complaint that it declined an offer from Tencent to collaborate on a new, quote, Horizon game last year. Tencent later announced Light of Mataram, which Sony said features identical gameplay, story themes, and artistic elements to Horizon, as well as many other similarities. And that's one of the wrinkles we are seeing here that nobody else has really called out with any other kind of company doing a copy of something else. It turns out that Tencent was in talks with Sony to make a Horizon live service game. And people were definitely wanting to play a Horizon live service game because apparently that series sold 38 million copies since its... Who's buying this game? Like, for real, guys. 38 million copies is that what we're doing right now? That's what this game is selling? Gaming is cooked, bro. Gaming is cooked. How? Really? That's all it takes? No wonder everybody wanted to play a live service Horizon game. No wonder Hermen Hulst pushes this series so much, because every other clown and casual is just buying the same third-person cover-based cinematic pretty on my 4K TV slop that everybody else likes to parade around as if it's a good game. Oh, Horizon is a RPG because I make like 2 character choices in text, and I say one is a good one is a bad one, and one is a rogue one. Therefore, it's a role-playing game. Stack points? Yeah. Assassin's Creed's an RPG. Like, we're going to get into that conversation, and I'm going to go down a rabbit hole that's going to make me have an aneurysm, so we're not going to do that right now. However, though, it does point out that Horizon was definitely on the table for more of live service games, and we've heard about this before as well, especially with PlayStation's massive live service push, and the fact that Tencent wanted to do that kind of game with them, but said, you know what? If you don't want to do it with us, we're going to make our own. And I think that's where things get a little bit sticky in this entire thing. It's not like Palworld going around and saying, we're going to make Pokemon, but we're going to make it what it should be, or in our twist and our version of it, and totally differentiate it because we're adding all these other elements to it or evolving it past what Nintendo wants to do. It's another thing to go through and be like, hey, listen, that stuff you gave us, that information you gave us, all that story stuff, we're just going to go ahead and use it on our own and make our own copy of it. Now, here's the thing, though. They didn't really need to work with Sony to get that kind of information. They could have just played the video game and been like, we can make a game like that, and everything would have been fine. But I don't know if this wrinkle of Tencent working with PlayStation would add a factor in the lawsuit. But let's continue in the article and go from there. Sony said that video game journalists have characterized Light of Mataram as a, quote, knockoff of Horizon, including one who called the game Horizon Zero Originality. Okay, that's actually really good. Who said that? Who said that? Who? Because you know what? That was actually funny. I'm not going to lie. Sony asked the court for an unspecified amount of monetary damages and an order blocking Tencent from violating its intellectual property rights. The case is Sony Interactive Entertainment LLC versus Tencent Holdings Ltd., U.S. District Court of North District of California. Now, even though Tencent and PlayStation were trying to work together to make a Horizon live service game, here's the part where things get a little bit sticky for me, just like they got kind of wild for Palworld. Just because you make a red-haired character who's a female protagonist in a world run by dinosaur-style monsters, it doesn't mean you owned that kind of thing directly. Aha, there's one for you right there. It also doesn't mean that you can characterize and close down anyone else for making that kind of style or that kind of game or using those kinds of creatures. I feel like this opens a massive slippery slope, just like we saw with Nintendo previously, trying to lock down specific patents of game mechanics, like PlayStation now is trying to lock down types of characters or even archetypes or even worlds that are being built in the gaming landscape. We've already seen so many kinds of games copy each other and try different things and try new things. Now, whether or not Light of Mataram is actually good is another question entirely. But here's where I think things can get kind of funny. If I put these two pictures up between Horizon and Light of Mataram, can you spot the difference? Yeah, you definitely can, because you know exactly what Horizon looks like and you know what a copy of that would look like as well, because Light of Mataram looks like it was an AI-generated copy of it. But the thing is, we're getting into a space now where if other game companies are not trying to lock down characteristics of their video games, whether or not it be gameplay mechanics or even aesthetics, that could be a huge issue overall, especially because so many game companies use Unreal Engine for their game visuals, and most of those games pretty much have the exact same style and look to them. You can absolutely tell if a game is made with UE Engine 5, not only because of the massive stutter, but also just because of the style of that game itself. Now, Reuters only stopped at that point specifically, but according to GameSpot, there was more information by Sony as well. Here's what they had to say. Sony said Tencent is, quote, deliberately causing numerous game lovers to confuse Light of Mataram as their next game in the Horizon series, by way of Tencent promoting it with a, quote, ripoff of Horizon's Aloy character. Tencent's conduct, quote, has caused and is causing irreparable injury to SIE, the company said. Sony is seeking statutory damages of up to $150,000 for each separate work in the Horizon franchise that was infringed, as well as for Tencent to deliver SIE's lawyers all products and marketing materials bearing what it claims to be are prohibited marks so Sony's team can destroy them. That, I think, is incredibly excessive. I feel like this is more of a deal that went bad between Tencent and PlayStation. Talking about getting all materials for PlayStation to destroy them seems a little bit overreaching, if you ask me. And I really want to think about this as well, because Sean Layden, if you don't remember, used to be one of the big heads at PlayStation. And guess where he moved to after leaving that? To Tencent. So I wonder what happened between that relationship and that moment in time for these things to coalesce, because he definitely would be someone to have connections in both companies. And I really wonder to think who he's going to defend out on this one. But of course, people had to go around and still defend their favorite corporation, because of course this has to happen. Take a look. Here's Doom Guerrero saying this: where are the millions of gamers that are pissed at Nintendo for Palworld when the world needed them here? Thought so. And I think this is where people are going to get really mixed up on this entire process, trying to use this lawsuit as some sort of defense towards Nintendo rather than seeing what actually happened, because Doom Guerrero even gets a reply like this. Here's Sabat X replying saying, here's the thing, Palworld marketed itself as Pokemon with guns. There's no confusion as to what it is. This, on the other hand, can pass as Horizon, even as someone who knows that game well. I honestly mistook it for a sequel/spin-off. And Doom Guerrero replying saying, I can say the same thing about every Souls-like game out there being a sequel or spin-off of Dark Souls and Elden Ring, and that's not a problem. And I can absolutely see the perspective of both sides. When you look at something like Palworld as an example, there are clear differentiating factors between why Palworld is vastly different from what Pokemon is doing with Nintendo. However, though, what Nintendo has been trying to do is not take down Palworld for copying Pokemon. What they're trying to do is take down Palworld because they want to lock down specific game mechanics, which have wider implications and wider issues concerning gaming as a whole. At the same time, though, I can also see the example of every game now basically trying to mimic or copy that same Dark Souls formula that everybody seems to be really attached to. Is Lies of P too much like Bloodborne? Can FromSoft sue the Lies of P devs because they wanted to take that approach and that style to it and have that sort of like macabre, Cthulhu-esque inspiration? Maybe, possibly, but I wouldn't want that to happen because that would also ruin the idea of someone having inspiration from those games. Here are other games that take inspiration. It doesn't mean you can sue them into oblivion because you feel like it, or that it's because it's too close to what you actually did originally. At the same time, though, you can definitely see everything from both sides of the perspective. PlayStation going like, yeah, this is a little bit too close, but also at the same time being like, look, you guys copy all the time, so I don't know why you're complaining. Just take a look at Astro Bot in any Mario game. Literally, the reason why they won Game of the Year is because they just basically copied Mario and put an Astro Bot skin over it. I said what I said. I'm sticking to it. So it really begs the question, what is going to happen next in the gaming industry? Are we going to see more companies basically file lawsuits at each other if things get too close for comfort of what's actually happening? Will this be something that Sony can even stand up to in court if they provide some sort of monetary damages? And what this really feels like is that the deal with Tencent to make that live service game basically just fell through, and Tencent said, well, we got all this assets, we've got all this work, we might as well do something with it and put it to perspective and try to make a video game out of it. And I think that's where it goes. When I look at it objectively, I think, well, there are so many other games that are clones of each other. What can companies really even sue for? Can id sue for every other game being a first-person shooter or having the gun model in the center of the screen? Is that viable? Can we have other companies try and lock down actual game mechanics behind patents like Nintendo and Warner Brothers did with the Nemesis system? Don't forget about that. This feels to me like a massive slippery slope where every company is now trying to protect their IP more than trying to create new content for gamers to actually enjoy. And sure, yeah, games copy other stuff all the time, but like I said, every company has copied somebody at some point. They've just been successful by doing it. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this to see what's going to happen in the future, and I definitely want to see what happens with this lawsuit, because this could set a precedent. It could either go A, everybody can just basically copy everybody else and make their own kind of game, which would be beneficial for indie developers making new stuff because they can get inspiration and ideas from that and have content for freely for everybody else. Or B, it could set a really bad precedent for other massive conglomerate corporations to basically sue other game studios, publishers, and developers into the ground if things are too close to what they feel will infringe on their own copywritten work. And I think that's where things can get really sketchy about all of this. Now, I didn't like Nintendo suing Palworld, and I'm also falling into the same camp of that with PlayStation. I really don't want them suing Tencent, not because I don't like Horizon, but because it would set a bad precedent for the gaming industry as a whole. Think about it like this. If it wasn't for Dota 1, you wouldn't have League of Legends, and then you wouldn't have Dota 2. If it wasn't for Counter-Strike, you wouldn't have Rainbow Six Siege and many other 5v5 tactical-based games. If it wasn't for Team Fortress and Team Fortress 2, you wouldn't have Overwatch. If it wasn't for Diablo, you wouldn't have Path of Exile. There's so many other games that take inspiration either directly from game mechanics or character styles, or just direct pulling from those games to really fit what makes them great in the first place and gives people a sense of comfort or enjoyment of that game to explore it and try something new. And the more I think about it, the more I press on it in my mind, I kind of don't want this lawsuit to go in PlayStation's favor. Even though the game looks like a total ripoff of Horizon and I wouldn't play it anyways, the thing is, the ramifications of this impacting the industry, in my opinion, are far too great and far too large, because it would make every other major publisher start trying to lock down what their mechanics are, what their visual styles are, and that would be a bad thing for everybody. And if you want like an even better example, I think a crazier one would be, what if that N64 game Winback decided to patent crouching behind a chest-high wall? That way Gears of War couldn't do it. Or if, let's say, Epic Games or Microsoft patented the mechanic of hiding behind a chest-high wall and then turned around and sued PlayStation for all the Uncharted games, and then no other game could use a crouching mechanic behind a chest-high wall. Or if PlayStation decided to patent hiding in tall grass to not get caught, or Ubisoft did that. That would impact and implicate basically everybody, and pretty much just exposes how everybody in the industry is copying everybody else. But you know what? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this entire thing. And are you going to be checking out Light of Monoram? I know I'm probably saying it wrong. I don't care. Let me know what you guys have to say. If you want to see more of this kind of content, more PC port reviews, gaming news, Steam Deck videos, fanboy content, my hot takes in the gaming industry, and live streams every Saturday night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 88,000 subs, and I just want to say thank you guys so very much. If you want Discord access and emotes during live streams, become a YouTube member. It's as low as $1. If you don't want to spend the buck, don't sweat it. Just show up every Saturday night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern for the live stream. Trust me, you don't want to miss it, as I get insulted for 5.5 hours through the chat with AITTS. It's a hell of a show. With all that being said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great one, and I'll see you gooners next time. Peace!